Well, it's been a long time since we've been in our uniforms.
Yeah, but it's been a while since we made a video, to be honest.
Yeah, life gets in the way sometimes.
Yeah, the holidays come up, you get distracted.
And when you're not professional YouTubers, there's other things to do.
Yeah, we're not professional at all. So we have a very different video for you today. Today we're going to be interviewing our friend, an amazing costumer, Kendall Bailey.
Or as she's known, Molotov Bailey. And we'll have a link to her Instagram in the description below.
And trust me, if you don't recognize the name, you're gonna recognize some of her costumes.
Because if you're into pop culture or the cosplay community, you've probably seen some of her costumes on the internet.
Yeah, they've broken the internet a couple times.
Well, we hope you enjoy the video. Hi, I'm Johnny Havoc.
And I'm Newt.
We're Simple Tricks and Nonsense, and we're going to do things a little bit differently, and we're going to introduce one of our friends. She's somebody that's super duper talented, somebody we met, I'm thinking 10 years ago. And this always gets confusing because when we talk to people who make costumes, we don't always consider ourselves cosplayers. And sometimes we call ourselves costumers. So, Kendall, do you consider yourself a cosplayer or a costumer? Which do you?
I prefer costumer. I don't particularly like the term cosplay. Not that I have a problem with it. I just think that it diminishes the amount of effort that a lot of fans put into the work that they do. It sounds kind of frivolous.
Yeah.
And so many people that do cosplay and call themselves cosplayers do an immense amount of artistry. And I just think it makes it sound I feel like it trivializes the amount of work that goes into it. So I prefer costumer.
Yeah.
So do you use, depending on who you're talking to, do you flip flop the words? Do you like, oh well, I'm talking to this casual person, I'll say cosplay because they probably know what that means. And
Yeah,
then other people,
I feel like people in the community kind of understand what cosplay is now, so you can sort of go, yeah, I'm into cosplay, but I think a lot of, especially in Australia, cosplay seems to be very anime-centric and is a lot to do with, like, oh, I do cosplay, so I dress up as this character, and then I do a skit in a competition, and I think that's like the play part of the cosplay.
Yeah.
Whereas I don't really do competitions, I don't really do skits and things like that. I prefer to sort of just, I don't know, like do like performance art or like a tableau, like a still life sort of thing in
Yeah.
3D.
Yeah, I've always thought the difference to me, in my mind, the difference between a cosplayer and a costumer are costumers make their own costumes, whereas cosplayers can, I bought this costume, I'm going to wear it and play around in it. That's always been my definition between the two. I don't know if that's right.
Yeah. I think there's like a continuum as well. Like there are the people that can go out and buy a costume and still partake in that community and have a great time and meet people that have similar interests and fandoms. But then there are people who, put a lot of time and effort into making everything from scratch. And I think the difference is like a cosplay is I put the costume on and I perform that character, I play that character. Whereas I'm happy to like make a costume and be like, my costume could be just on a mannequin or by itself and it's a costume. It's not playing anything at that point. So that the costume is, its own art without me having to be part of the narrative.
Okay, let me backtrack a bit because we really jumped in. So we met at Dragon Con through it was probably through the Venture Brothers community, right? Okay.
Absolutely, through Venture Brothers.
Yep. Okay, and then we're gonna come back to that in a second. But yeah, we met almost 10 years ago, Dragon Con. Everybody who's watching this, if they're watching this, they're now realizing that, hey, she talks funny. So tell us about yourself. Exactly. So tell us about yourself, where you're from, like go into some of the more interesting details of you're not the ordinary costumer. You have like a very professional job and you went to school for like smart people stuff.
Oh, yeah. Okay. So I live in Sydney, Australia. I will say I've been costuming or cosplaying my whole life. Like when I was like 5 years old, I'd make stuff that I could wear, and I'm sure it was terrible, but it was like that was just a natural thing for me to do, and it kind of evolved. And I always was like, if somebody threw a costume party, I was there with like the biggest, craziest, most full-on thing because, oh my God, I get to like make this wearable art. And then, yeah, my professional life, I spent like 10 years at university. I did a visual arts degree. And then I went to med school and I became a forensic pathologist. So my day job is I'm a doctor and I do autopsies. And my hobby is my art. And I really got into the costuming community. And I'm going to say props and costuming because it's not just costuming, it's making props and puppets and things like that as well, and standalone art pieces. But I got really into that because as much as I loved doing illustration when I was at art college, it felt really crappy that you spent all of this time on this drawing that then just went in a book on a shelf, or unless you had an exhibition at a gallery, nobody ever saw your work. And, you know, it's different now with the internet. There wasn't like, I'm very old, so I didn't have like, there wasn't Facebook and YouTube and TikTok. So your art, like, unless you had a gallery that took your work or you got published in a book, no one really ever saw your work. But when I made stuff, and when I was doing illustration, I was actually starting to do 3D illustrations and photographing. So the photograph was the illustration, but I was really into the sculptural part of it. I sort of went from that to, well, if I make this thing that I can wear, and then I go out, people will see it, and it goes into the community, and I meet people that like what I do, and I meet other people that also do the same thing. And if I make things that are from old movies I liked as a kid, I'm going to attract people that also like those old movies, and I'll make friends that way and find people that have your own fandom. And now it's sort of like I get to make an art, and then I get to go to this cool party with all my friends and hang out with all of these people who like the same things as me. And it's like the best of both worlds. It's social, and it's also a way to be artistic and have your art be seen and not just like stuck on a shelf or in a book or on some random portfolio page on the internet.
Nice.
Yeah, I wanted to bring up I think some of my favorite costumes of yours is obviously your Henson themed costumes. So just tell us about, do you have like a favorite or favorites that you've done for there? Not just costumes, but props as well, because I know you've done puppets and props and everything, and costumes for them.
Picking a favorite, I don't know. They're all my favorites. Like at the time, like the time that when I'm building something, I'm super into that idea, and I'm really engrossed in building that thing. And at that moment in time, it's like my favorite thing. I did really like the castle, the Skex's castle dress. That was super fun. I'm going to take this castle and the silhouette of the castle and translate that into a ball dress. And it was crazy and practical, but I loved how it came out at the end. It was really great.
Looked amazing.
Yeah, I really enjoyed the labyrinth dress that I did with the false alarms on it. That I liked that at the time, and again, like while I was making that, like just the problem solving of it, like working out how it's gonna go together, how it becomes a dress, how is it gonna be wearable, how am I gonna get it from Sydney to Atlanta, so it all like broke down into different pieces and then like stacked into itself and all fitted in one suitcase. So yeah, they're some of my favorite ones, definitely. And the really sad thing is, because of COVID, I had 2 more sort of concept things I was doing, and then COVID happened, so they're kind of like half done, and they're probably going to be my favorite thing. Like once I've like when I get to work on them again, they'll be back on the top of the list of, oh my god, this is my favorite thing right now. But yeah, it's like you know, asking somebody who's your favorite child. I'm like, I love the ball so much. And then yeah, things like my Kira doll here.
I know, she's so cute.
I love her, and I love how she turned out, but man, I hated making her. Ball jointed dolls are like trying to work with the possessed object, like their limbs are flailing around and they won't stay still, and you have to like tie their legs together. And yeah, it's that one I'm just like, I hate you, and then at the end I'm like, I didn't mean it, I love you.
That's awesome. Is there, besides Henson themed stuff, is there a particular property or franchise that you made a lot of costumes for?
Well, Adventure Brothers, which is how we got to know each other. I think we really started talking to each other because I bought one of your little helper dolls.
That's right. You were like one of the very first Etsy sales on those. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that that was just like, oh my god, I need this thing, and then we were like, oh, I know you, like from like cons and the internet, and then we started talking, and
That's right. I was like, oh yeah. I was like, I saw you at a distance. You had that really awesome Molotov costume.
yeah. So my first Dragon Con, um, it was right after I finished doing my college exams to be a forensic pathologist. So it's like 5 years post university to become a forensic pathologist. And there's all these crazy, crazy exams you have to do. And I finished all my exams and I was finally like, oh my God, I don't have any more study or exams to do. I can go on vacation. And Dragon Con was where I wanted to go. That was like my bucket list thing to do. And at the time I was like really, really into the Venture Brothers. And so like I wanted to do a Dr. Girlfriend and a Molotov cocktease. And both of them were the translation costumes that we were just talking about, like taking something that's super basic and it's fine for a cartoon character that's like this big on the screen or in a book where you don't have to have much detail on it. But once you blow it up to human size, you actually have to fill in some of those blanks. You can't just have like big swathes of just one color. So I started, like, they were really fun because there was something that I get to, like, you get a bit of your own creative license with. So I'm, doing the Dr. Girlfriend, the original Dr. Girlfriend, the Jackie Onassis kind of jacket, and going, okay, what's, it's the Jackie Onassis jacket. So I'm going to go and get like the Chanel kind of fabric that's got some different colors and texture to it. And I made it super structured and like lined and huge shoulder pads in it and like a really stiff collar. And then I had like, I covered a bag. So I had like a bag in the matching fabric and a hat in the matching fabric. And that was super fun to do. I actually wore that to a wedding because nobody knew that it was a costume and not just
awesome.
Not just like a really cute pink jacket. And then the Molotov cocktease one as well was one that I'm like, I know lots of people do it where they just like get a spandex onesie and like cut the front out and then like sticky tape it to themselves.
Yep.
And like that works, it looks good, but I was sort of looking at it going, okay, no, she's an assassin, so this is going to be like this black leather catsuit, and I did all of this extra seams in it, and like I think it was probably lost on a lot of people, but all the way down the side was like these chevron-shaped seams down the leg, and then all of her like weapon pouches and stuff was all red leather, and I got a hammer and sickle belt buckle for the front of it. So it was that, and that was so much fun, just like doing all of that and making it really chunky and tangible. Like this is like this leather catsuit that is going to protect you. It's not like I'm just like running around in spandex, because that's not going to protect you as an assassin, and you can't like hang stuff off that. It's just going to like tear your suit. It's got to be like really structural. And I put like all these rivets and stuff on it. So I really tried to embellish it and make it really interesting. And that was so much fun. I really enjoyed just like working out where extra seams would go and how like actually the front and the back, because it's got that massive low cut that's got like plastic piping all around the edges of it, so it's crazy stiff, so it doesn't go anywhere. And it had all of this padding in the boobs. And then I spent 2 weeks in San Francisco on my way to Dragon Con, and I was staying with my friends in Oakland near Little Mexico, and I ate so many taquitos in those 2 weeks. I got to Dragon Con and went, oh, I got fat. Don't need this padding in the bra anymore.
That kind of stuff, though, what you're talking about is really what makes your stuff stand out, like your Molotov cocktail from other cosplayers. It's all that detail, and it looks like it could be in a movie, as to it doesn't look like a cosplay.
That's what I like about taking a cartoon or a comic book character and going, okay, how would this look like in the real world? Not just like, I'm not just trying to make a copy of the cartoon character, which, it can work too. Like heaps of people that do the Archer cosplays where they draw I know there's a special name for that, where they do the shading and the lines and stuff so they look like a cartoon character. Like that's a whole other art form as well. But I just like the idea of, okay, this isn't a cartoon character now. Now this is a real character. And yeah, if you were making the Venture Brothers movie, what would she look like? What would it be like? So
exactly.
That's what I find. That's what I find really challenging. I guess you get to use your own creativity. Then you're not just replicating somebody else's design. You're making it your own.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah, we talk about that, how a lot of times with the superhero stuff, or when something's coming from a cartoon, a lot of people, their go-to is to just get polyester or some kind of synthetic or some kind. It's almost always shiny. It always looks very synthetic, and it doesn't have a whole bunch of texture to it.
I love texture. I'm crazy about texture.
So I remember you and I talked about that. Was one of the first things we talked about was your Molotov costume, and I was impressed with the rivets that you put in it, and it just like you were saying, the detail on everything, and how, like I said, a lot of people, instead of using the same material to get matching leather for the knife pouch and the holster and everything like that, they'll either spray paint it or they'll get something else. So you get all these mixed match colors throughout the costume. Whereas you're like, no, uniformity all the way through, and it's going to be made out of the same real world material. It helps sell the whole thing.
Yeah. I think I kind of did the same thing when I did my Aeon Flux costume. When I did my good version, I did like a crappy version of Aeon Flux, like 15 years ago or something now. But it's the same wig. I was really happy with the wig. The wig came out great, and the rest of the costume was like, it's okay. But in retrospect, I'm like, oh, so amateur. And I'm like, no, I could do this better. I can do it. And I did it all out of like fake leather. And then again, like her pouches and stuff, I made sure that I did. Some of them were fake leather, but then some of it was real leather. So the bikini part of it, because if you've got fake leather and you cut the edge of it, you can see the fake leather edge. But I got real thick like belt leather and did the bikini bottom part of it out of that, and like stained it and like burnished the edges so they were really round and shiny, and like put the like metal loops and stuff on it, so it was all real world. Like how would it be if it was real and not just a cartoon? And I don't see many people do Aeon Flux cosplays or costumes, but again, often it's like, oh, I just got this bikini that's made out of spandex and did it. Whereas I was like, no, I'd like this. Again, she's an assassin. She might be running around in her underwear, but it's going to be like tough underwear.
I like that you don't shy away from, like, a lot of people when they're thinking of, oh, that costume would never work in real life, you don't shy away from like the sexy part of the costumes,
Yeah, I mean, the Aeon Flux one, like I had a suit on underneath it, and so some of it's actually like attached to the suit, because there's just like no way you could have it, you like it just wouldn't stay up on your leg, or it just wouldn't stay on your butt.
Anti-gravity.
But like you make it look realistic, but it still looks just as sexy as the cartoon, So.
Yeah, I was trying, and then again, like I wanted it to be as much like the cartoon as possible, but not look cartoony.
Exactly.
Yep. And talking about your bodysuits, until you sent those photos, I didn't realize for your female predator that you were actually wearing, for your arms and legs, where you had the painted spots and the markings of the Yautja on there, that's actually a bodysuit. And then going through it, seeing Aeon Flux, I'm like, oh, that's a bodysuit too.
You don't realize it when you're wearing it.
Yeah, that's so smart, because it's like, oh, well, I don't want to take all this time and energy to paint myself and worry about smearing it on everything or getting on the costume or having to pack a compressor and fly halfway around the world. That it's incredible.
Well, especially for the Predator, because the pattern on the arms and legs is very specific. I just didn't want to spend like 6 hours in a hotel room, trying to paint my butt, when I could just put on a pair of tights and put on the arm things, and all I had to paint was like my torso, like that was, and just color match it, and it made it so much quicker to put on. Like I want to get out there and have fun and hang out with my friends. I want to spend all day getting painted.
Yeah, no, that's.
Because I'm imagining like trying to paint your arms, like the size of your legs and everything would be a pain.
Yeah, well, it's like when I did Darkness, I had you like I'm there like half naked in the bathroom going, Becky, paint the back of my arm. I can't reach.
Yeah, that was wow.
Having good friends who can paint you when you do have a weird costume like that.
Was.
I was gonna do arm covers for that costume, but the ones I had, I just didn't sit right. It just didn't look right on the day, and I just went, you know what? It's just going to be easier to paint my arms today than it is to try to get this, stocking fabric to sit right on my arm. It was sort of like hanging funny, and I just was upsetting me, and I was like, okay, I'm going to throw that out at the last minute and change my mind.
Yeah, I forget. It hasn't been that long, but it has. I forget what a team effort it was to get you ready for Darkness.
And it's like, I can't reach my feet, John. Put my stilts on me.
Put the stilts on. Yeah, the stilts and Becky's body painting you.
There's a
and
whole
it's like,
production team.
Like, hand me my horns.
My horns are sliding forward. Somebody tie it to my back.
Oh yeah. What was the other thing that we had to tie around your back? And I was like really concerned that it was like, is it too tight? Is it too loose? Is this gonna fall off?
It was from the horns. So it was like it was anchoring the horns to I think to the cape, because they were so front heavy.
Yep,
that I needed some extra. I needed
counterweight.
some extra, counterweight. So it was sort of like tying that to that, and you used a lanyard, and you're like, "Is that too tight?" I'm like, "No, it's good. It's good." It's like, it's all good. But yeah, the horns like came out, so I could take them out, like sit down and have a bit of a break, and not be like that person at a con that's like wearing a great big thing that goes and sits in the front row and blocks your view.
Oh, that was so much fun.
How much, as you're building your stuff, since most of the time you're planning to travel with this, how conscious are you of how much something weighs, how it's going to wear, where it's going to be positioned, like if you need to reinforce it or come up with an alternative way to like tether it in place? Like as you're building it, you're like, okay, I need to keep this as light as possible, or are you working all that out way ahead of time, or as you're doing construction?
I get a rough idea about like a concept or an idea I have, and I kind of get a rough idea of if it's going to work or not. But then mainly the entirety of the design goes around like whether or not it's going to fit the suitcase. So I've got like my largest suitcase, and I'll work out like the dimensions of the biggest thing that has to go in it, and it's like, is this going to fit? And then I sort of work from that. And then there are things that, you know, if it's not going to fit in a suitcase, how can I break it down into pieces? So like we said with my labyrinth dress, like that was 6 panels. So the 3 big face panels like stacked inside each other, and then the 3 smaller corner panels stacked inside that, and it was like exactly the size of my suitcase. And then with darkness, the last minute thing I decided I was going to make was the staff with the little dragon on the top of it. And that was way too long, but I had PVC pipe with these screw joints. So I just like worked out how big the suitcase was, and then just made like 3 sections that were as big as the suitcase, and then just had screw joints. So I could just like break it down, put it in the suitcase with everything else. But yeah, so pretty much everything, like the Cylon, that was all designed, that fit in, I think, 2 suitcases. And that was almost entirely like designed around how big the shoulders were, and that was the size of the suitcase. And when I realized that that would work, that is the right size that it had to be, then I was like, yes, I can do this. I can. And then things, you know, went inside. So the shoulder piece went in, and then these pieces Velcroed off, and then they stacked inside here, and the head fit here, and so it was just like this suitcase Tetris with all of the pieces to make sure it fit. But yeah, that was a really great costume, and that was so much fun because it was kind of a translation costume as well as a replica, because it was a replica of something that didn't actually exist. So because it's CGI in the show, I was taking something that was like nobody ever actually built, it was never a costume, and going, could a person fit in that? And if I fit in that, and when I worked out like how big they were on screen and how big their waist was, and I worked out my waist was the same size, and I was like, oh, I just need 1 foot tall stilts, my waist, and I had my arms like literally like a yoke with my elbows tied to this yoke, and that's how I got the shoulders. And I got weird nerve damage in my arm from wearing it.
Oh no.
You know, my index finger was numb for like 2 months. But once I worked that out, I was like, oh my god, I can do this. I can be a robot. It can be a thing.
See,
and it came out really well.
And that's why there needs to be a definition between cosplay and costumer. You're like a puppeteer, you know, you're not just wearing this just to have fun. It's like you gave yourself nerve damage from wearing it. It's like it's all for the sake of the
I did
art.
not mean to do that. But that's funny you should say puppeteer, because I like never realized that I was a puppeteer before. I don't consider myself a puppeteer. I didn't consider myself a puppet builder. And then like we started doing sort of the Henson stuff together, and I loved that. And then I kind of thought back to all my other costumes that I'd made before, and I'm like, oh, my labyrinth dress, like the mouths moved and the eyes moved. I'm like, oh, they were puppets. And then my Cylon, like, it had articulated fingers, and I could control the fingers from further up inside the arm. And I'm like, oh, that was a giant puppet. I made a giant puppet and I didn't even know. And I'm like, oh, I've been accidentally making puppets for years, apparently.
Yep, and your Molotov with the Hank head boobs.
Oh, yes. That was,
Yep.
that was
telling
so
John
much
how-
effort for such a dumb joke.
That was
I was so
awesome.
impressed because you couldn't just have them stagnant. You had to make like the mouth move on them. That
Oh,
was
yeah.
amazing.
Yeah, it had like little servos in it. And I had a speaker with a loop of that kill pop, kill
Kill
pop,
pop,
kill
kill-
pop. And it was just so noisy at Dragon Con that no one could hear it. So
Yeah, well, I
Since then,
remember
I'm
you're
like-
you're like lean in.
Yeah,
lean
we're
in.
all leaning into your
You're
boobs.
like,
Like, I can
you're like,
hear.
I can,
listen up,
I'm
listen
listening to her boobs.
Yeah, that was. I was really disappointed that, and I know now, like, don't even bother trying to have
Audio.
audio stuff with costumes if you're taking it to a con, because no
Yep.
one is going to appreciate it.
Yeah, Billy was the same way. Billy Quizboy was the same way. You couldn't hear what he said.
And your I know going to another costume that you recently did, your Atreyu and Artex costume kind of took the internet by storm, and I'm still seeing like that shared in very different groups, you know. And I know even some people thought like it was a real horse, and they got mad.
Yeah,
I'm like,
yeah.
so
I got a
guess
little
you
bit of
can-
hate mail.
Yeah, you can confirm it here that was not a real horse. That she's just
Yeah. It
amazing.
was not.
And it just looked very
And
real.
I'm not very good at taking progress pictures when I make things. Like, even when I go in with the best intentions, I'm like, I'm going to take progress pictures of this, and then I get so intensely, like, you know, obsessed with what I'm building that I get to the end and go, oh, it's finished. Oh, I forgot to take photos.
Yep.
I do that too.
So there was some photos because I was carving this horse's head, and that was another one where I went, how big is my biggest suitcase? How deep is it? How big is a horse's head? Like a real horse's head, and will it fit? So that was one where the bottom jaw came off, and then it sort of went inside itself, so it was sort of smaller than it really was, and its ears came off, and I was like, yep, this is doable. I can put this all in a suitcase. And like, he was actually on a little track with little wheels, so I could like drag him around. But yeah, that was one where when I put up the progress pics I had taken after the fact, like so many people, I think so many comments going, thank you for doing this. Now I've got somewhere to send people when they say that you murdered a horse for this costume.
Exactly.
No horses were harmed.
No,
I was really flattered. I'm just like, if you think it looks real, then like I've done my job. That's
exactly.
so flattering.
That's again, looking at like linking analogies, the idea that these people, costumers, can be magicians and basically hide the secret to their work, or like, you know, hide how it was made. And then for you to be able to get hate mail where it's like, oh, you know, she's using a real dead horse head for this costume. It's like, no. I'm just such a good magician that you fell for the trick.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, I'm never offended by that. The same as there was like a lot of people like, fuck that boy and fuck this kid, and then people are like, that's not a kid, that's a grown woman, and I'm like, dude, the fact that you think I'm a 13-year-old boy is like, that
you could cosplay a
that's great.
13-year-old boy and
I did my job. Like that was the point. The point was I was dressed as the fact that you thought I was is brilliant. Like that's the same as with the Cylon. There were people that were going like, oh, there's not a person in there. It's a giant puppet. I know my friend Dylan was standing nearby, like texting somebody, and somebody was like, are you controlling it with your phone? And it's just like, no, there's a human in that. Yep. I saw one post that said the person in it was a double amputee. So yeah, and I just like,
awesome.
And people are getting offended on behalf of me, and I'm like, that's hilarious. I think that's great that like that means the illusion is it's not like, well, I can see where the person is. It's like you are so baffled by it that.
Yep,
it's a true artistry there. That's amazing.
Part of the magic trick.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yeah, exactly.
Again, like I said, going back to your tights, the use of your tights as opposed to body spray, the fact that I was hanging out with you and then we did all that stuff, exactly. And it wasn't until I looked at these pictures I'm like, well, there's one predator leg there and there's a predator arm there. I'm like, that was just tight. Like she didn't paint herself. I didn't know until now. I was this many years old.
Yeah, that's pretty amazing because we hung out like all day.
I know.
It's awesome.